I'm Noah Eckstein, and I want to tell you about an amazing experiment in biomechanics that involved cockroaches and tiny gunpowder-loaded cannons. But first, I need to give you some basic background information. To start, let me tell you about a certain way of classifying physical systems. For the spring doorstopper and the traffic cone on the left, when these systems are pulled away from their starting position, the natural physics of them pull them back. We call systems like this stable. For the vertically balanced pen and the wobbly Jenga tower on the right, when they are given even a small push away from their starting position, their natural physics pull them even farther away and they fall over. We call systems like this unstable. Now, for humans, if it weren't for our brains, we would be unstable in the standing position because we are basically upside down pendulums. Without our brains, we would have to be perfectly balanced in the upright position, and if a tiny gust of wind came by, we would just fall over. But since we can sense when we are falling over, and we can change the position of our feet in response, we can recover from pulls and pushes, which makes us stable. You can see me doing this on the left, and on the right you can see a computer doing this to keep an upside-down pendulum balanced. This process of measuring what's happening in a physical system and then using those measurements to correct when the system is doing something we don't want is called feedback control. Let's take a closer look at feedback control. Imagine you're having a tug of war with your dog, and let's say you want to keep your arm from extending too far. Your dog yanks on the rope, which makes the angle of your elbow start to extend. After some small time, all kinds of organs that work as sensors in your body pick up the change in your elbow angle. I've represented these organs with the measuring tape at the top of this diagram. Then, once the measurements are taken, the sensor organs send their measurements up to the brain via nerves. After some time traveling along the nerves, your brain gets the message, and it takes some time to figure out what to do about it. Then, it sends the necessary instructions down a different set of nerves to your muscles, which again takes some time. Finally, your muscles pull your elbow back to the angle you want. The main thing to understand here is that this feedback process takes time, and we could measure about how much time with the right experiment. Finally, we're ready to talk about the cockroach experiment. Basically, researchers wanted to understand how cockroaches respond when you give them a push as they're running. Now, as easy as it sounds to give a cockroach a push, it took some engineering to do it precisely and repeatedly. The solution they came up with was to strap a tiny gunpowder cannon to the backs of these cockroaches, and as they ran down a tiny track at top speed, they fired the cannon, shooting a little cannonball off to one side, in turn pushing the cockroaches off to the other. They then recorded the way the cockroaches responded, measuring, among other things, how long it took for the cockroaches to return to normal running after the blasts. So, what did they find? They found that the cockroaches were running like normal within a single step after the cannon blast. This alone is pretty wild, but what makes this really interesting is when you consider what scientists had already known about the cockroach nervous system. If you think back to the slide about feedback control, we said that the process of sending messages back and forth between the brain and the muscles takes time, and this time could be measured with the right experiment. Well, based on measurements of the cockroach nervous system that had been done in previous experiments, the cockroaches in this experiment were recovering from the blasts so fast that it was very unlikely, if not impossible, that the cockroach brains could have had anything to do with it. The researchers concluded that the natural springiness of the cockroach's legs was responsible for returning them to normal running. Essentially, they discovered that running cockroaches are stable in the same way that the traffic cone and the springy doorstopper were stable, not the way that we are stable against being pushed and pulled. Since their nervous systems don't have to worry about feedback control, this frees up their nervous systems for more important work. Who cares? Well, engineers do. On the left and middle, you can see a cockroach robot that mimics the springiness of the cockroach's legs to allow the robot to run like real cockroaches. People hope to use robots like this for search and rescue missions in the future. On the right, you can see a robotic leg that has natural springiness, and the springiness doesn't completely replace feedback control, but it makes the process simpler and more effective. Researchers today are working on incorporating this kind of springiness into prosthetic limbs and exoskeletons for people with disabilities. Why did I tell you about this experiment? The first thing I want you to know is that biomechanics is absolutely crazy and amazing. The second thing is that biomechanics is not just about humans, but all animals that move. The third is that biomechanics can inform engineers in how they design the robots that will one day make our lives better. I hope you enjoyed my presentation, and thank you for watching.